For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. Today I'm giving you a bit of a review video on an awning from Isabella. So with me here today, I've got the Isabella Capri. We've currently got the Capri in kind of their traditional kind of North fabric, and Isabella, as you know, their fabrics are probably the best in the kind of industry. What you get with Isabella essentially is a breathable material, and it's basically designed to last. You know, people who have Isabella awnings will be testimony to, you know, you can easily get a good 15-20 years out of Isabella if you keep it in good nick. And it's all about quality, breathability, and almost, to be fair, almost regard of price. Isabella, as they create their own awnings, it's all about making sure that it's the best it can possibly be. And throughout it, we're going to talk through a load of features throughout this, so do bear with me. It will be quite an in-depth video to the Capri, but we'll go through every sort of thing, each feature we have on offer. The Capri, really, to be fair, in kind of Isabella's collection, is more based as a touring awning. So it's more designed for going up and going down with ease, but really, the material quality of what they use is actually far superior to most people's actual sort of seasonal awnings. You can use this for a seasonal awning more than happily if you wanted to, and it's a bit more sort of price conscious in comparison to the Ambassador. It's basically the same in the Ambassador in nearly every single way. We've done a separate video on that which you can check out. The sort of main differences really is basically the weight of the fabric they use in the roof. So with the Capri, we've used a 265 gram acrylic Tenkati material, and then the sides are 295. Whereas when you move to the Ambassador, it's 295 on the sides and also the roof. So that's the real main difference. So the sides are still the same spec. And also you've got this beautiful kind of Capri kind of North material. It's almost like a denim side. That's one thing. You look at the actual fabric itself and you can see the physical stitch line and how it's woven together. And that's probably one of Isabella's biggest selling points purely is the material that you actually has as a base unit. What you find is it's a breathable material, so on a warm day it'll be a lot cooler inside, but on a cold day it is also warmer inside as well. But more importantly is how they actually physically make the material together. So it's basically solution dyed or dope dyed, as it can also be referred to, where they actually dye the thread before it's woven into the fabric as well. Now, what that actually benefits you is you have a difference between, say, like a carrot and a radish. So a carrot, you have the colour all the way through, so you cut it in half, basically the orange in that case sort of bleeds all the way through it. So where you have a radish, you cut it, you have the outer coating of the actual kind of colour, but you have that white side of inner. This is important because over a lifespan of an awning, what happens is the UV starts to degrade it, and that outer coating starts to sort of basically disintegrate, should we say. And then you then see a lot of fading happening because that white from the radish side of things is coming all the way through. It's a more expensive process to do it this way, but as Isabella, you know, it's do it once or do it right. So you have that sort of beautiful colour the whole way through the thread, so it retains its colour better than any other brand pretty much out there on the market. Other things that we were talking about in terms of comparison to, say, the Ambassador is the fact that sort of the front canopy itself only goes down sort of about a foot off the ground. It's not a full sort of front canopy, and the overall length of it is a little bit longer. As we've got it situated here, I've actually got an additional kind of a canopy on the front of it, well, a shorter version, should we say. So really, the awning actually bears from this point here itself. Generally, what I also do like about kind of the Capri in particular is the kind of almost like almost like a leather bounding kind of trim. Again, it's that kind of a jeans vibe. It looks more modern, even though being a more traditional kind of shape. It's actually a standard depth of 250, and obviously it's a full awning, so it goes into the rail the whole way around the Caravan, so you get an ultimate sort of seal against the Caravan, and it's then bespoke made. So depending on how big your awning Caravan is, will depend on how big the awning is itself. Due to the overall frame of it, it's really nice and structurally strong, and actually front panels are very vertical, so even though it's only 2.5, which is kind of your standard depth, doesn't really matter what campsite you go on, it's going to fit on. But you actually feels a bit spacious inside just because the walls are very vertical, and actually gives you enough space in there to more than happily live as you see. In terms of frames, there's two different options you can go for. So you can either go for the standard Zinox frame, which essentially is sort of like a steel frame like so, or you can go for the carbon. Carbon naturally obviously is a lighter, I think in the region about sort of 20%-ish lighter. And so if you're looking for more using it for a touring use, then really the carbon would be the better one because you've got to save a considerable amount of weight. Steel's fine, it's definitely more of the price conscious option versus the carbon. But really, I said it's pay your money, get what you go for really on that side of things. As we have it in situated here, we've actually got an optional extra, which is the mesh panels. So what you can actually do is obviously gives you a sort of bug-free barrier directly, so you can have the airflow nicely into the awning and not have to worry about sort of the critters coming at night, especially when you have a light on in the middle of the night. Last thing you want is to be, fighting midges all night, for that example. We've got it situated also with the veranda pole, so you get one veranda pole as standard. The veranda pole can go in the front panels, well, either the front panels of course, or even the sides, so you can create that veranda effect really quite nicely regardless of how you want the setup. Also to mention as well is the fact that with the awning, you've got such fine details that really do make Isabella what it is and why it lasts. So when we're looking at things like the pegging points, all of the pegging points are reinforced and also they're kite stitched, so really nice strong stitching. The elasticated parts can be replaced as well, so if you do damage it or lose it over its lifespan, it's easy, nice to repair. Really nice heavy duty PVC mud wall as well as there, again designed to last quite nice and neatly. Other things in terms of the actual fundamentals of how it's put together is why it's brilliant. So for example, with all of the sort of the main roof seams, the fabric when it's interlocked is sort of triple folded and then double stitched to get a really nice tight seal. So naturally the first time you get it wet, it sort of puckers up and then it gives a watertight feel. And to the point actually with the way they do it, they don't even need a tape seam to make that seam waterproof. Naturally the way it's basically, like I said, nuts and bolts put together will give you that lifelong sort of durability on that point of view. We've got ventilation points located at the top. Another thing which is quite nice with the Capri is with the little canopy, not that you can see it initially at the moment, is that you still get your pole located for the front. So it's not just your sort of little canopy coming out, but you also get the additional pole, again, which on a cheaper awning you don't normally tend to find. It's another way they can actually kind of save money in the overhaul. Beautiful big PVC windows, as we can see here, and then we've also got a natural kind of side door located on here as well. And again, there's those fundamental little bits and bobs that do make Isabella what you are. So with the panels itself, you've got really nice big zip pullers, oversized zips, and it's what we call like a spiral chain counted tuff zip. So it's made sure that all the teeth are essentially counted, so make sure when it's a quality control aspect for one, but also means that Isabella know how long the panel is, how many teeth there are, so if you need any spares or parts later on there, they've got that level of intellect of the product to know what goes where. But also with a spiral chain zip, it means that when you get to the curved points, which are naturally always a bit of a tighter area, it will slide and glide a lot easier, and you get less damage over the long run as well. It's, again, all these things kind of make up to what it is. Other points to mention, the fact is we've actually got reinforcement points as well on all the points where the pole will meet the actual awning. And with kind of the framework that Isabella do, be it the Synox or be it the carbon, is actually that it will lock into the canvas as well. So on the bottom of the feet, they've got what they call regulator points, and later on in this video we'll kind of get a bit more up close and personal with those. So it allows you to necessarily put the frame directly on the awning, and then you've got your little spike located on there, so it locks in the top. So it locks in the top with the fabric itself, locks in the bottom, so then you get really nice tautness, and also then it binds the frame with the canvas. So small little points like that do make a really nice difference. Other things to mention as well, obviously you've got the little holes at the front. All of the clamps that you see on kind of the framework basically is Isabella's sort of isofix. It's really nice. Extend it and then clamp it. Immediately when you go to, even with the steel frame, you still got a clamp system. It's not until you go to the next frame up, which personally I probably wouldn't recommend for the Capri, even though you could buy it for it. It's a bit sort of overkill for probably the awning itself. And then you have like your wing nuts, which you sort of lock in place. On the side, we've got a really nice sort of traditional kind of colour panel. Again, I'll bring the camera around a bit later to look at that a bit more in detail. It's a bit sort of tight here where we are today. And you also got a sleeve, a small little kind of almost gutter part. So what you can actually do as well is you can buy additional piping to go in that little sleeve, and then you can look at adding little canopies and stuff off the side. So you can even put your sun canopy like this, for example, off the side. You have a little door canopy, so you can really sort of add on to it and make that home away from home. And it's that level of detail which you do get with Isabella, you wouldn't necessarily get with another brand. And it's all about flexibility, and like I said, creating a setup that you really want and something that will overall really nicely last. Extra points located on the side here for some typhoon straps that come in naturally with the awning itself, but you also do tend to have additional points located on kind of the bottom panels. So if you want to add extra guide points again to give it additional tension, which you'd buy additionally, you can also look at that as well. Tell you what, let's kind of actually swing the camera inside and actually talk through a load more features that the Capri has got built into it. So now we're inside the Capri, you can probably appreciate for kind of the setup we've got actually here. So as you can see, we've got a really nice sort of table and chair set, pushed right up to the front with that lovely sort of front flat panel, a little touch on the Isabella lights as well. And you've still got enough room happily sort of to get access to the caravan door and walk around the awning itself. And like I said, it's quite impressive considering it is your sort of standard 2.5 depth. It's worth mentioning that if you wanted to go for a deeper awning, you can go for the Commodore, which is basically like the Ambassador. So again, next version up, but it's the 3 meter depth. But arguably, with the ability of adding kind of your sort of eclipse canopies, you can make it bigger if you wanted to as well. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you can sort of create a whole section on the outside rather than directly in. Naturally, you can buy additional lights, for example, to clip onto the framework, as you can see here. And as we've, like I said previously, we've got the real nice mesh panels in. It's really nice fine mesh as well. So even though that's an optional extra, you do get mesh as standard. So basically, the side panels, as you can see here, you've got a really beautiful kind of mesh window. There's also a PVC zip down curtain that goes on the outside of it as well. And not only does it zip down the side, but being Isabella, zips are kind of almost tend to be along the bottom again to get a really nice proper seal. The panels itself are kind of in a way offset. So what you have is you have, like say, a 70% window and a 30% door. Now, they are kind of handed to a certain degree, so it means that as we have it here, we've got the door situated at the front. If you would change the panels round from either side, what that then does, it pushes the door towards the back. So you can sort of flip your sort of setup and again create that kind of area that suits you rather than having the awning being how it is. Reinforcement points to some I mentioned on the outside, so every single point where the pole meets the canvas and there's a join and the possibility of being a sort of a weak point. We've got reinforcement points built into it again, so you haven't got that sort of rubbing directly on it again, which eventually will wear. So it's small things like this again is why Isabella's last necessarily as long as they do. Beautiful material again, it looks really, it's really nice to get it properly looking sharp, and especially with the material itself, when you have to feel the weight and the handle of it, you don't find anything else that really does compare, in my personal opinion. You've still got key features, so you've got your sort of fix-on clamps, so this will basically feed directly onto the canvas like so, and then you've got your roof poles that will clip directly on. Isabella do supply you with enough sort of roof poles and side poles, depending on your size, to make sure it's structurally strong as it needs to be. But for me, it's like I said, that head height, literally from the front point there, is absolutely boastful from that point of view. So that works really quite smart and nice and neatly. Curtains are something that comes as standard with the Isabella, and one thing again, that thing where it does sit above the rest is it's not a annoying thing that you have to feed on and feed off every single time. It's quite a clever little system where you've almost got little tracks which you feed on once, and then the curtains actually just kind of unhook onto the sliders. So the joys of this means that again is once you've done the curtains, pop them on, all you're really doing is just inserting it over, and then it's in the rail, and it's a much more sort of solid connection directly into the awning itself, and you get a really nice coverage with it. Even the details of kind of the retainer points down the bottom here, again a press studge, and from a feel it's a really nice sort of material rather than like the sort of shower curtains that possibly that other brands necessarily do, and it's again all about that class kind of feel from that point of view. PVC sort of obviously skirting on here as well is to make sure we've got a really nice fit to the actual Caravan and stop the draft coming down. A draft skirt tends to be supplied as standard, and typically you tend to get, I'm pretty sure, a single wheel arch cover included with that, but you can obviously look at and buy or exchange for a double wheel arch if you need be. Other things to sort of talk a point really as well is the fact that all of the clamps, depending on the awning you go for, have that sort of single lock system. Works really nicely, and for me, the carbon frame in terms of its structure is as good as steel. It's got a little bit more flex to it, but it's the lightness you're paying for. Depending on this, and if you're not sure necessarily your following length, you can always contact us and we can also give you a bit of advice on what would be the best sort of size for you. We've got access to kind of Isabella's little almost back catalogue of information where we can sort of look at your brand, sort of your vehicle brand is, what necessarily your sort of year is, and work out your sort of A-frame size. And literally Isabella have a much more finer, we'll call it more refined in terms of their sizing chart, whereas it's not a generic things like a size 16, 17. They break it down to much smaller increments, again, to really try and get that sort of fitting where you really want it to be. Let's pick the camera up actually a little bit more up close and personal, some of these features that I've been talking about. So the first thing you can also see is kind of actually, we'll have a look at that panel and how that works. So like I said, we've got that sort of 30-70 design. So the door on the side, and again, it's the fine details that really make the difference. Even your sort of door points that go directly back are sort of a button clip, again, to make it nice retained, and they are oversized as well. Curtains, as previously mentioned, you've got kind of a really nice system, so it's a little track system that stays on the awning all the time. And that's one of probably the biggest bugbears with some awnings, is when you're inserting the curtains, they're an absolute nightmare. Use your second pair of hands. A real nightmare to put on and off, whereas this it's a lot easier. Oversized zip pullers, as we've said, and you've got a really nice sort of tooth, counted tooth zip, works really nicely. The sort of Isofix adjustment makes the life a lot easier, and we've got the reinforcement points along with the external point, again, to lock it directly down. When we look at the sort of regulation tab in the bottom corner, there's different heights you can go into, again, so you can manipulate it depending on kind of what you're looking to fix it directly into. So that works really nicely, and as you can see here, we've got a veranda pole running nice and neatly through that. Apex vent at the top again to help sort of increase airflow, and then three, also like I said, the height in here is one thing that's absolutely boastful in comparison. Little sleeve located at the bottom here, so that's basically going to be your main point if you want to run the veranda pole from front to back rather than sort of across the front. And again, you've got your Isofix points, fix-on points, apologies, to go onto there, really quite nice and neatly. But you can see down the bottom again, we've got all the flag stitch points reinforced for the pegging points to get it looking really quite nice and sharp. That's the mesh window, and we've rolled the extra part up as well. You can, like I said, create a veranda because you've got zip pullers on all the sections. And as we look on the outside, you can see how that works really quite nice and neatly. And then that's the another bit of extra trim. That's the point there for your typhoon straps, so additional storm straps to break it across the width. You can buy an additional one that goes from sort of the apex directly down, which I would probably personally recommend, even regardless if you're on seasonal or not on seasonal. And an additional bit of piping that we were talking about earlier will feed directly into there, so you can put sort of lots of add-ons. But again, it's that sort of tone of the trim works really quite nicely with it. But generally just sort of sits so smartly, and you look at the kind of that roof section and how well that looks. You can see also kind of the depth of the canopy that comes obviously with the Capri itself, and also then where it kind of finishes. So it's not essentially the full canopy, so it's finished about a foot off the ground. Whereas I look next door, there you go. So that's the full canopy from that point of view. So again, you can see how that works. You do have Isabella's iconic kind of porthole sort of part in the door itself. And like I said, as we've got here, we've actually put the additional sort of eclipse canopy. This is the mini version, admittedly, onto the awning itself. But as we kind of come back, you can create your real own kind of setup, be it with your matching kind of windbreaks. So again, you can buy your north windbreak to create your sort of, again, home away from home, but looks really quite sharp. And it's those sort of finer details that I really do love about kind of the Isabellas and what they necessarily do. Your typhoon straps looks like that. So again, even the point from there, you've got, again, a nice wooden part, traditional kind of look. Loops onto the additional points, as you can see here, and just gives you that real sort of bounce and braces design from that point of view. All in all, like I say, if you have more questions or queries about kind of the Capri or any of the Isabella collection, you are always welcome to have a look via the link below to the range of sizes available. And we've got all the prices on our website, like the link below. So you can choose your size that you want, you can choose your frame and spec it all up. Generally, it's something we do endeavour to try and have in stock at all times, but normally we can get hold of them pretty swiftly if we are out of stock for any reason. But you can also check out, we've done a separate sort of video on sort of pitching a full awning. Traditionally, what you want to try and do when you come to pitch it is basically start with a middle point. So you start with a roof pole, then come down and you come out like an A-frame kind of thing. Start with the uprights and work backwards. So it's the same principle, and obviously the larger size, the more roof poles you have, and so on and so forth. But all in all, admittedly, I would say, Isabella's aren't the cheapest, but you do pay for what you get, be it the quality of the material, the way it's been put together, the zips, the reinforcement points, the reinforced stitching, the material, how it's actually dyed in the process, let alone physically put together, made in Europe again rather than necessarily the Far East. The options of the frame sizes, the additional extras. You can buy annexes again if you wanted to make it bigger for a sleeping capacity as well. You can really go to town, and again, it's that extra 10 or 20% that make an awning, a good awning, to pretty much, the best in kind of the category that you see. And certainly for me personally, I really do like the Capri, just because I think from a price point, it's not the cheapest in comparison to other brands, but you see what you pay for, and you buy it once, and you buy it right. You buy it Isabella. So yeah, like I said, any more question queries, or if you'd like to let us know what you think of the awning itself, feel free to comment in the box below. It's always great to have feedback, be it good, bad, or indifferent. And there's always things we do endeavour trying to pass on to Isabella as well, if things you would like to see. There's lots of sort of scope there as well. But like I said, any more questions, feel free to let us know. But that's kind of our video review on the lovely Isabella Capri North in the Awls sort of full awning. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon in our next Attwoolls video.